What's going on? It's your girl Fathom DJ, live and direct. Of course, this starts at YouTube and it ends up in other places. It is what it is. I was having a conversation today with a Jedi from Chicago, and he's encouraging me to add more content to my YouTube page, which is where we met. Interestingly enough, we travel in the same circles during a period, but I'm not sure. We probably were in the same rooms together, but just didn't make that connection. So we met on YouTube, and we had a great conversation today, and I totally appreciate Victor Salazar and his energy today. We talked about music curation and explaining the idea of how this, I don't want to say should, but could work for venues. I come from a history of really great music based on the period of my conception, as well as who my mother, grandmother, grandfathers, grandmothers, because I have a few of them, are and were. And this plays into my selection of music still. When it comes to places that I've worked, I come from a legendary group of lounges, and we have to make the distinctions: lounges, bars, and clubs. That's three different lanes. And we were talking about the concept of where we are as a culture in terms of DJing and making those differentiations. I've always been associated with lounges and some bars, but lounges over clubs. Now, we have to understand that clubbing may be more pop culture driven, maybe more commercial driven. The lounges and places that I was associated with before I came to Atlanta were legendary in their own rights based on the style of music that was prominent during that period. And of course, there was always commercial music, but the underground scenes, the soul scenes, the neo soul scenes, and hip hop most certainly were infused with jazz and soul and funk and rare grooves and disco and house and things of that nature. Like sampling was prominent. So during that period, you had tons of ways to address a group of very great genres through hip hop: soul, jazz, funk, disco, R&B even. And so our curation of DJ sets was organic based on that time period, and we just had a great group of venues that were popping up in particular areas: Funky Buddha Lounge, Cinnabar, Dark Room, Harry's Velvet Lounge. There were tons of spaces in the area of Wicker Park, as well as River West, even River North, that were lounge themed. So you didn't really have a problem understanding soundtracks and curating DJ sets that went along with that period, because music during those, early 2000s, even late 90s was incredible. I mean, even Mary J. Blige and her collaboration with Lauryn Hill for All That I Can Say, like, somebody don't even know that Lauryn Hill wrote that song. Anyway, that's another story. But music was really, really good during that period. So in this day and age, we have a bunch of dumpings, or should I say people hoarding. So you got all these people who are opening venues, and they're not very specific in terms of the type of clientele that they're looking for. And most certainly, you want to make money. You should have an idea of demographic as it pertains to the type of clientele that is probably going to best suit your venue and render you a return on your investment. Having said that, I have a bit of an expertise as it pertains to curating based on particular vibes. And that's one of the reasons why I was brought to the city of Atlanta. And that is one of the reasons, that is the reason why I'm aligned with Pollard Den here in Castleberry. Well, I'm not in Castleberry Hill, but in Atlanta in Castleberry Hill. And so he's like, you need to explain the idea. So because I'm an artist and a visual artist first, most of you might not know that yet, but because I'm an artist, I can look at decor and envision what type of music might be played. And there are, I would say, I come from a school of DJs who understand this culture. Sean Dervis is one of those DJs. DJ Question is one of those DJs. Dr. McCoy is one of those DJs. I would say DJ Peanut is one of those DJs. There are a lot of people in the ranks of Pollard Den's music affiliates who are those type of DJs who understand culturing great soundtracks to pair with food, to pair with drinks, and most certainly to pair with decor to create an experience. And there's me. And I most certainly fall in line with those particular styles. So I'm curating playlists for Pollard Den. I've curated playlists for Rocksteady. I've curated playlists for a few hotels in Chicago, and most certainly curated playlists for events as well as some websites and for some personal people, in addition to DJing, which could be two different lanes. But ideally, we have a group of, I don't want to say younger, I want to say maybe underexposed people who are DJs who just run through and they just grab the top 40s of R&B or the top 40 classics. And that's not a diss, because if you're in a general marketplace, then you might want to play things that everyone might like. But when you start to get down to specificity as it pertains to a theme for speakeasies or a theme for a lounge or a bar or a club, when they're themed, then you really have to kind of focus in on what the client wants. And this may be a series of conversations that we have about the idea of decor, fare, the menu entirely, again, furniture, lighting, and the things that might play into a soundtrack for a venue, for a restaurant, for a bar, for a pub, for a club. And they differ. So, we have folk who are just like, oh, I just play, everybody wants to hear this. But it's like, if you're selling between a $13 and maybe $20 cocktail, and you might have a $3,000 sofa, a Chase lounge, or, very higher end furniture, then you might want to veer away from what is commercially acceptable or commercially popular and dive deeper. There are tons of genres. There are tons of artists. There are tons of underground tunes that are not being referenced, but are most definitely palatable for an experience. And I'm excited for several reasons. I'm excited because I've garnered another project to be able to culture the musical environment for, and not just from the standpoint of playlists or DJing, but also speccing out equipment, dealing with sound engineers, and I wouldn't be installing things. I possibly could do that, but working with folks to install sound systems and based on equipment and sound, getting like dirty like that, like it's exciting. And it's also exciting to have someone who may not know that I'm doing that to affirm and acknowledge and encourage my movements in this way. So the idea of having virtual DJs potentially come to you live in a venue is a real thing, because it's kind of what I'm doing at Parlor. Um, I'm slowly implementing that in addition to my curation of actual playlists that we're going to be publishing for the consumption of our guests and future guests, as well as booking DJs and putting them in venues and specking out the equipment for those venues, and using my expertise and my knowledge to create a culture of musical experiences is exciting. In addition to all the other things that I want to do and am going to do, this is a feather in my cap. And I am most certainly grateful that Victor thought it would be a good idea for me to talk about it. So that's just me on this good Monday. It's Music Monday, and I am forging forward in my process. I'm afraid to look at my vinyl campaign because the numbers are not where they need to be. But I did do an e-blast this past weekend, as well as hitting some people's inboxes. So I want to say thank you to whomever is backing me for this vinyl project. And hopefully, we will meet the numbers so they can be cut and sent to you guys, so I can hold that 45 in my hand. Because I want to hold it in my hand. And hopefully it will create interest, and I can start to get some record labels, some independent record labels interested. That's another subject. But for the sake of the conversation, I'm Fathom DJ, live and direct from Atlanta. And this conversation is about music. I am not editing this. I'm not. Music curation, playlist curation, curating DJ sets, and DJing. There it is.